Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, January 27th, 2025. Time to get going again. We have another week ahead of us. This is week 2, in case you're trying to keep score, or think it's week 20 or whatever it is, of the new Trump administration. I guess it was just this time last week we were gearing up for the actual inauguration ceremony. And hey, it's been a week. It's been a month. It's been a year. As usual, we've returned to the pattern of erasing weekends. Donald Trump goes golfing and ruins things for the rest of us and, makes phone calls and tweets and such and changes the direction of American policy at a whim. And everyone writes breathlessly about it, and we talk amongst ourselves on social media about how terrible it is. And then Monday comes, and it's time to round it up. We had a trade war this weekend. We had threats of a regular war with people we're supposed to be allied with, all sorts of things happening this weekend. And in fact, as I was getting ready, just mentally rounding things up over, I guess, Sunday night and a little bit this morning, I'm going to have to go back to the social media feed. We'll have Greg, of course, rounding things up for us and will help us out. I think it's entirely possible that, well, certainly possible that we won't get to everything that just happened over the weekend. That's amazing in its own right. But even just remembering, oh, yeah, on Friday before the weekend, but after the show, or maybe while we were doing the show and we didn't notice, something else happened we have to catch up on. There's an awful lot. And it'll cost you more to keep abreast of things, too, as well as your morning coffee. The price rises, falls back down, maybe, possibly, depending on which version of events you believe. But we had a little back and forth with the country of Colombia over the weekend that may or may not result in tariffs being imposed by one side, both sides, neither side, and generally leaves us wondering what the hell was going on and unsure of whether or not we can believe the news reports that we're reading in the paper, or at least insofar as they quote the White House as to what happened. I'm sure we'll talk about that with Greg. It's actually top of his list today. But golly, what a weekend. And of course, we also have to round up news on the other idiotic possible let's have a war front with Greenland. There's something I've been holding in reserve, or not holding in reserve, not being able to find time to share with you that I really need to catch you up on, just in terms of the level of alarm in Denmark about not knowing what the United States has in mind with respect to Greenland, knowing that they have always thrown the doors open to us to do whatever we want. If it was really a matter of national security and the United States wanted more military presence in Greenland, it's almost always a granted. These were very close allies with Denmark, and so they are just flat out puzzled as to what we're looking for. And we don't know either, because Donald Trump makes it up on the fly. And apparently they actually had a high-level phone call between the two national leaders, and the Prime Minister of Denmark came away just, baffled as to, but more than baffled, kind of shaken as to what is it that he wants to do. We had a very disturbing phone call. It's going to be interesting. All right. In the meantime, many other crazy stories making their way into the news today. We'll see what Greg has in terms of news roundup. And let's see. And we'll see how golden my voice is today. I'm having difficulty cramming in all of the delicious hot beverages that I want. I feel like I got to keep up on the coffee thing before the price goes through the roof. We were going to have a 25% tariff apparently imposed on Colombian goods across the board. And of course, most people's minds go to one or another stimulant as the chief export of Colombia. But in fact, it is crude oil. And I understand this economy in this country uses some oil and needs a little bit, even though domestic oil production is at an all-time high. But also on the list, I noticed as well, a lot of people pointing out cut flowers. I mean, I don't know how critical that is, but with Valentine's Day coming, and certainly with the price of eggs already through the roof, raising the price of coffee wasn't going to help very much. And all of the reporters who need to go to Trump diners to ask people, Trump supporters, whether they still support Trump, even though there's no logic to it. And the whole purpose of going and visiting with them is to bring back to their newspapers, can you get a load of these guys? Can you believe these guys still support Trump given that he's doing what he's doing and destroying their way of life? Yes, I can believe it. The price of their eggs in their breakfast through the roof. Now the price of their coffee will go through the roof. And I don't know how to reconstruct this story about what news reached Trump, but we'll talk about it, I am sure. But it sounds like the story was, we'll reconstruct it all with Greg, but the fight part of it, Trump decides he's going to impose 25% tariffs on everything across the board. And I don't know whether it had anything to do with realizing exactly what that was going to do and how the repercussions in the economy would affect people, in particular, maybe even Trump supporters. But at any rate, depending on who you ask and in what country they are, somebody backed off. And but of course, if there was any chance that it was the Trump administration that said, all right, well, that's stupid, we're not going to do that. Of course, the press release was, we won. The other side balked. And I'm not certain. It's really kind of interesting, too, watching the development of American coverage of it, because it sounds to me like the first round of American coverage of it was, Trump imposed these tariffs and then, found it wasn't going to be necessary or found some accommodation anyway with Colombia and changed his mind about the tariffs. But, of course, Fox News played it as Trump scared them, they gave in. And by this morning, even relatively neutral news sources like AP were playing it up, headline and lead paragraphs, like Trump had some major international success in this. It was kind of disturbing and sad. Anyway, Greg Dworkin is here. You're probably, I think at the moment, enjoying tariff-free coffee. Anything that's already in the country, you wouldn't have to pay that duty on. So how's it going?
That's assuming they don't raise prices.
Yes.
The idea that, I bought
that.
it cheap, therefore I could sell it cheap because prices are about to go up, and I won't raise the prices now because what I sell next week and what I sell today ought to be the same price. Why would I think like that?
No. I mean, I actually did think, maybe I should get to the store on the double quick here. Not all the coffee. I mean, as it turns out, 20% of American consumed coffee comes from Colombia, which is a pretty large percentage, but I don't know. If you're drinking fancy stuff that comes from elsewhere, you're paying too much anyway.
Stuff. See, the Colombian, the 100% Colombian coffee is often not the highest grade and therefore is a bit cheaper.
But it is 100%.
It is 100% Colombian coffee.
That's right, at 125% the price.
Picked by Juan Valdez, if you remember those commercials.
See?
So the idea is that, it's if you happen to like Hawaiian Kona, good for you.
Wow.
Holy mackerel. It was $25 a pound when I discovered it 30 years ago. I don't know what it is now.
You may be in trouble. That's something you can get a hold of as probably a little blend. They'll put a little bit of it in there.
Right.
But there's all sorts of coffee. But at any rate,
but it's not really Hawaiian Kona unless it comes from a certain county in France.
Apparently not. They love to do that with the foods. So a little bit of coffee panic. How do you want to tackle this one today? Did you want to?
In terms of discussing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to retell the whole story or just give us the lowdown?
Let's set up, because I think there's a lot of stuff that's background to this that really needs to be mentioned.
Right.
First of all,
Donald Trump is president.
I'm going to actually start with the Smoot-Hawley Act.
Okay. Donald Trump hasn't been born yet.
Yeah, he hasn't been born yet. The year is approximately 1930.
My favorite year.
The Depression started in the middle, toward the end of summer in 1929. And the background for that is World War I. Food prices skyrocket. And this information, interestingly, I thought I would go to a really left-wing site, so I went to the corporatefinanceinstitute.com.
Commies.
Yeah, exactly. .commie. And here's what they say. During the time of the Great Depression, farmers made up about 20% of the U.S. population.
Like coffee from
Food
Colombia.
prices skyrocketed between 1915 and 1918.
I see.
As counties emerged from World War I.
Well, they all emerged
So in
at
the
same
20s,
time.
the Roaring 20s, as European farmers were recovering from the war, American farmers were finding all of a sudden this harsh competition. Without war, they can actually grow stuff. Now we have to compete with, French truffles and all that sort of stuff.
Ooh la la.
So, in the Trader Joe's of the day, American farmers met European farmers. So falling prices due to overproduction were hurting American farmers, and American agricultural interests pushed Herbert Hoover to raise prices on agricultural imports, which Hoover promised to do in the 1928 U.S. presidential campaign. He won.
Okay.
He got that 20% of the vote for sure. However, as soon as he took office, representatives from other sectors said, yeah, us too, me too. It was the Me Too era. I want our
even then,
sector prices raised. So the law raised the tariff by approximately 20%, prompting other countries to impose high tariffs on U.S. exports as retaliation, exactly what we were about to see for a few hours with Colombia. It led to, and Colombia is spelled with an O, by the way.
Yes.
When Trump put out the press release, he spelled it with a U, like the university.
Yeah.
And he started talking about sanctions on Colombia, and all the Yale and Harvard people started snickering. Say, you, not us.
Oh, they thought it was a Gaza protest.
Yeah. So the law raised the tariff by approximately 20%, prompting other countries to do the same. It led to U.S. exports falling from $7 billion in 1929 to $2.5 billion in 1932.
That's less.
Just to put things in perspective, yeah, it's $1930. But $7 billion to $2.5 billion, that's pocket change for Elon Musk. He could have funded the entire trade deficit. Foreign exports were down by 1/3 from their 1929 levels by 1933. International trade plummeted 65%. And by 1934, President Roosevelt signed the Reciprocal Trade Agreement Act, which reduced tariffs and supported trade independence because it was seen to be a good thing. The Bushes in that era, president signed a trade agreement with Colombia. Things were going swimmingly. Smoot-Hawley was remembered as a horrible mistake, and then Trump got reelected. And Trump spent the first week doing stuff. And I have a discussion about that, just the idea of doing stuff. But he's doing stuff, and one of the things he's doing is pushing how strong he is on deporting immigrants.
Yes.
Now,
strongly strong.
They were already being sent out by the previous administration. And the way this was done is using ICE aircraft. The president of Colombia objected to the idea that now the planes to Colombia with Colombian citizens in it were going to be military aircraft. All of a sudden, military aircraft is flying into Colombia. Nobody asked him. He didn't like that, and he barred those planes.
Sure.
That's what started this whole argument.
Yes, so ordinarily you either have to charter civilian aircraft or use civilian-style aircraft. And I heard countries don't like it when other countries' military aircraft just start flying into their country.
Exactly. So, breaking all the norms, Trump did this.
To be strongly
objected.
Strong.
Trump said, I heard about it, and therefore I'm slapping a tariff. And the president of Colombia said, you slap a tariff, I'll slap a tariff. And that's where I want to get more particular here. Kevin Drum has a translation of Gustavo Petro's tweet, the left-leaning Colombian president.
Yes, all right.
Okay. And here's what he said. Trump, I don't really like traveling in the U.S. It's a bit boring. But I confess there are commendable things in the U.S. For example, I like going to the black neighborhoods of Washington, where I saw an entire fight in the U.S. between blacks and Latinos with barricades.
Wow.
Which seemed like nonsense, but, I confess I like Walt Whitman and Paul Simon and Noam Chomsky. I confess that Sacco and Vanzetti, who have my blood, since he's of Italian origin, are memorable, and I follow them. They were murdered by labor leaders with the electric chair, the fascists who were within the U.S. as well as within my country. I don't like your oil, Trump. Oh. This is the president of Colombia writing. You're going to wipe out the human species because of greed? Yeah. Maybe one day over a glass of whiskey, which I accept despite my gastritis. We can talk frankly about this. But it's difficult because you consider me an inferior race. So if you know somebody who's stubborn, that's me, period. You can try to carry out a coup with your economic strength like they did with Allende, but I will die in my law. I resist the torture. I resist you. You will kill me, but I will survive in my people, which is before yours in the Americas, where people are the winds. Goes on and on and on and on and on. Mentions the Egyptian pharaohs, Simon Bolivar. Sure. Why not? From now on, today on, Colombia is open to the entire world with open arms. We're builders of freedom, life, and humanity. That's in all caps. Let our people plant corn that was discovered in Colombia and feed the world. So he said, you're crazy, but I can be just as crazy, and my tweets can be just as long as yours and make at least, as little sense as yours do. And Trump said, you not only want a immigration war, you not only want a trade war, you want a dueling Twitter war. Well, I'm all in. I'll do all these things. So finally, in the wee hours after declaring that there was going to be this huge tariff, which, like Smoot-Hawley, would begin the next Great Depression, everybody backed down. Colombia agreed to take the military planes. Trump agreed not to put the tariff on, and that's where we stand this morning.
Okay.
So
did they agree on the military planes?
This was mine is bigger than yours. A lot of this was nonsense. But, the whole thing about Trump is that you cannot assume that it's all bluster. You can't. He would do the things that he's saying he's going to do.
Yes, even if they're dumb or dangerous.
Stupid.
Yes.
So, I haven't gotten to the point where I know the answer to the question. But the question in my mind is, Smoot-Hawley didn't work. It greatly contributed to making the Great Depression much worse.
Yes, it was right in Ferris Bueller. Why does Trump
want a depression? Because all of this tariff stuff is threatening that.
Okay.
I mean, what's the point of saying, it's blazing saddles, back away or I'm going to shoot myself.
Right. The movie's explaining all of it.
Shoot yourself. Who cares? I mean, what is the point of threatening a depression when it's going to hurt you?
Oh, I don't know.
Unless you want one. And if you want one, why do you want one? And I don't know the answer to that.
I guess if you have, or you think you have, billions and billions of dollars. Well, and of course, he would never give any consideration to how much of the value and purchasing power of that money is based on the health of the economy. But I have billions of dollars and I'll still have them even if there's a depression. Well, yeah, but if there's hyperinflation, but I'll have more money than most people.
All of his money is
he doesn't. Yeah, why? It's ephemeral, and right. There's certainly that, and two,
people actually do have money. Bezos has money, and Musk has money. They stand to lose a lot. There's a lot that's going to be lost anyway because of various and sundry things we'll get to, including discovering that China actually has cheaper and open source artificial intelligence programs that the U.S. doesn't have, and Silicon Valley's about to lose a ton of money.
Oh, no, not Silicon Valley, who everyone loves so much.
We'll get to that, too. But I want to get to this BBC article here. So summing up all of that, Colombia yields on U.S. deportation flights to avert trade war. And they properly point out that this whole thing started with the background. This whole thing started over what kind of flights were coming in. A trade war almost happened between U.S. and Colombia, spelled correctly, appears to have been averted after the Colombian government agreed to allow U.S. military flights carrying deported migrants to land in the country. The whole thing was over military flights carrying deported migrants.
Yes. Now, I understand that there was some allegation based on, I guess, video of a different deportation flight, but similarly using military aircraft that landed in Brazil, and then some allegations of from some Colombian nationals.
Well, Petro, the guy who was ranting about Trump, showed those videos.
Yes, he was very interested in them because it's one thing to use military aircraft, and I suppose, certainly I've heard 2, 3, 4 versions of this story already, which was one of which, I guess by late afternoon yesterday, the Colombians were saying, we don't object to receiving migrants being deported from the United States. We object to them coming on military aircraft. But I guess if they've now negotiated back the military aircraft, the issue was that on board those military aircraft, and one of the reasons apparently that Trump ordered the use of military aircraft was so that he could further abuse the migrants during the flight, flying them back to Colombia, or at least in this case in the video, back to Brazil, in shackles and handcuffs, which, they're on the plane, they're not getting out, just let them sit. You've chartered the flight. This is why they usually use civilian charter flights. One, of course, they're moving civilian people, not military. They're not prisoners of war. And 2, there's no reason to be humiliating or maltreating them either. They're on the plane. They're going back.
There's no overt guns involved, so it wasn't appealing to the Trump administration. Right.
So they wanted to make it very strongly strong and have video of people marching in and out of, cargo aircraft, C-17s and whatnot.
Well, let's go back to those farmers we were covering last week. I don't really think he's going to do that.
Well, yeah. Right. Although I don't know where these deportees came from. It's still entirely possible that they'll be targeting blue states for these raids and deportations.
Watch the same social media as we do.
And of course, they are migrant workers in many cases.
Then what does a technical argument about where they're from and where they're going have to do
You're right.
with food prices rocketing?
And I mean, if you can't pick in California, that doesn't mean the price stays the same for stuff raised in Arizona either. It goes up too. Or these are migrant workers. They'll pick the fields in California and move over to the next field in the next state. They're migrants.
What you mean? They'll not pick food in California and then they'll move over to Arizona?
No, I mean that ordinarily, in the ordinary course of things, they'll pick the fields that are ready to be picked and then move to the next one. And if you arrest them when they're in California, they won't be there in Arizona later when you need them to pick, or first, or whatever the order is.
Policy, which is going to raise prices. And the idea that, now that everything's hunky-dory with Colombia and we fixed everything, I have news for you folks. Coffee prices are likely to go up at least a little in the anticipation that this might happen again.
Even for Sumatran coffee. I don't know where that is from. Where's Sumatra?
Sumatra, Indonesia.
Okay. I don't know. I saw that on the coffee. But I'm not a coffee connoisseur. Fantastic. It looked like it was high priced anyway. So
all sorts of different
they make out like bandits.
Coffee blends,
Sumatran bandits.
And they're all great.
Yes.
Because like the alternative is no coffee, so that's not acceptable. Yes, we can drink tea. The British taught us how to do that, but it's not the same.
Yes, that is interesting, though. We have a history of dumping that stuff in the water, even if we like it. So I don't know. We should be doing the same with the coffee, possibly. So the Colombian, 100% Colombian coffee, now 125% Colombian coffee, but I guess price-wise. But we're not going to have the tariffs now?
So
is that where we
have the tariffs as of this morning, but who knows by this afternoon.
Yes.
And today is January 27th. It's been 2021 week that he's been president. For those of you who despair that nothing seems to affect, it's only been a week.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
He keeps on doing stuff like this, and within 3 months, he will be deeply unpopular. But you're not going to see it in the first week. First of all, people haven't even heard about it. They didn't have time. They were there, then they were not there. There
was football going on. They were watching that.
It takes time to filter this stuff down. So do not despair that nothing seems to affect him. It's too early to affect him.
Yes.
It will.
I also, it'd be interesting to see the news lag effect. I wouldn't be surprised if most people were waking up to the news that, oh my God, coffee prices are going to go up because of the new tariffs, and then it takes a couple days to figure out, they're not going to be the tariffs.
Tie it to him, but then this is going to be the theme in the second part of the show. Now, this is from the New York Times.
Coffee to him.
There's a Chinese company called DeepSeek. DeepSeek forces a global technology reckoning. Prices are plummeting today on Wall Street. Markets are on edge as global tech investors face a $1 trillion wipeout that caused anxiety that the emergence of powerful and cheap Chinese artificial intelligence software could upend the economics of AI, partly because
there are no economics
open source.
Yeah.
Well, NVIDIA, the chip maker whose processors help train and run AI, is down 11%. Right?
Yeah.
Constellation Energy, utility betting heavily on powering AI data centers, are down 13%. Tech executives and policymakers have been left to wonder how strong America's lead in AI really is. Do companies need to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on vast data centers powered by hugely expensive chips from NVIDIA and others? Not when China can do it differently. Does America need the huge uptick in electricity generation that's fueled a run-up in utility stocks? Not if you can make them much cheaper.
Yes.
And do leading AI companies like Google, Meta, and the privately held OpenAI and Anthropic deserve their astronomical valuations?
No.
Now, if these prices drop,
yes,
they say it's because China has this software. I say it's because Trump tariffs, and it's his fault.
Hey, I like that. And why not? We should be doing it. Well, Trump just did, I think, one of his big announcements. The stock market dropped.
That's because of what happened with Trump tariffs. No, it's really complicated. It's Trump.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. He always says it's somebody else when someone else is president.
Everything bad that happens is Trump.
I am in agreement.
Used to it, because that's what you need to be doing.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We solved the world crisis over 2 minutes, but just to keep things interesting, we decided to restart them.
Yeah, well, China is rebooting the whole AI thing, but just wait till Singapore jumps in and does Sumatra. BI, and then Taiwan will do CI, and then, what are you going to do?
A plus I. I'm going to just do
plus,
slightly cheaper. Well, I can't believe that the Chinese have come to market with a cheaper product and disrupted American manufacturing. That's such a new idea. Well, at any rate, I don't know why no one anticipated. Why didn't AI warn us?
It goes back to the whole idea. Look, we captains of industry own everything, and we're just going to jack up the price, and nobody's going to compete with us because, why would they?
I guess
we'll just buy them.
And they have the ability to, just suck up the dollars of investment.
China says, well, we're not part of you. We can do this.
Yeah. I mean, they can go ahead and do that.
I didn't see that coming. I'm screwed.
Did no one ask AI, hey, are the Chinese going to undercut us on the price, and should we stop wasting our time?
Why don't you just ask your really super duper expensive AI, so what are the flaws of this plan, Siri?
Right. We're going to be undercut by the Chinese.
Oh, I didn't see that coming. I forgot to ask Siri before
turn off Siri, damn it. Right, yeah, exactly. Most of the AI was like, well, I don't understand. Draw me a picture. And, then That's where it went off the rails. Right. These Chinese people aren't real. They have 17 fingers on each hand. That's crazy. They'll never be able to. Wait a minute.
So all of this is happening.
Yes.
And because all of this is happening.
Is it AI?
I felt obligated to include in my pundit roundup this morning a piece from the New York Times entitled, "Here's How President Trump Shifted Policy in His First Week."
It went like this.
Pretty much.
Okay.
During 4 years in political exile after his first term, Mr. Trump vowed to radically reshape American life, culture, and politics. Not all of his directives will succeed in the end, but already the U.S. is a different place than it was a week ago. Several efforts to address climate change have been rescinded. More land open to oil drilling, for example. Government now recognizes only two immutable genders, male and female. Migrants are now referred to as aliens, and they're being turned away at the border. Immigration agents have been freed to target hospitals, schools, and churches in search of people to deport. No more so than they usually do. They're just making a bigger deal about it.
Yeah.
And I added to that story, oh, he doesn't mean it, the voters said. This is like classic, leopard face eating party?
I guess. Yeah, although it may be that they don't raid their churches.
So, no, he is raiding their churches.
The big ones, the mega churches?
Some of the evangelical food kitchens and other things that have been set up to help with migrants being defunded, and they're really upset about it.
Oh, that wasn't just Trump looking for potato chips?
No. So, again, this is going to take time, but it works its way through the system. So all of this happens, and the main thing is Trump keeps calling up the newspapers and saying, I did these things, and that's because I'm really strong, and that's your lead for the story. I gave you the lead there. Write about how strong I am because I did these things. And so the papers obligingly do that. And this is all within the first week of the 100 days when the papers are inclined anyway in any presidential administration to give the president the benefit of the doubt because that's how they're built.
That's kind of a good point. We're all mad about them giving Trump the benefit of the doubt, but as archaic a concept as the 100 days thing is,
it's
that's
important
actually in
to know
their
because
newspaper
they
DNA. That's true.
You may think it's archaic, but that's what they do.
And and they're just sort of geared toward let us. It's interesting why they would continue to do that, but let us give any new president, even a stupid new president who isn't even new, 100-day grace period where everything he does is presumed to be well planned and wise.
And even if it's not 100 days, we're certainly going to give him a week.
Yeah,
because it's only been a week.
Right. Yeah. So still.
Trump gets up there and he says all these things. David Litt, who is a former Obama speechwriter, has a piece in the Contrarian called How to Drink from a Fire Hose.
Let me be clear, how to drink from a fire hose.
Yes. A former Obama speechwriter says this week one rhetorical strategy is what's going on and how you can help beat it. He says, among presidential speechwriters, laundry list is a devastating insult. That's your typical State of the Union.
Okay.
It refers to a bland recitation of policy proposals with no coherent theme or inspiring message. Another devastating speechwriter insult is a Christmas tree, which means a speech that has something for everybody but no central focus.
Oh. All right.
So Trump's second inauguration day speech was a laundry list of Christmas trees.
All right.
First, he gave a speech in the rotunda that promised the golden age, but was just a disorganized to-do list. And over lunch, he added items. And then he went to the Oval Office and signed a bunch of executive orders and pardons, a few of which will fulfill campaign promises, many of which will push the limits of presidential power. Any traditional messaging expert from either party would tell you this was a mistake. But Trump, for all his general unhingedness, frequently tried the normal approach in his first term, which is how he got Infrastructure Week. Trump's second term message strategy seems to be throwing dictatorial spaghetti against a wall to see what sticks. And it's actually pretty smart because it's dominating the news because it's different. So he wrote a whole speech about how to counter this. And he gives some suggestions. When Trump goes big, we have to go small. In their excellent book, Made to Stick, the brothers Chip and Dan Heath spent a lot of time talking about the idea that people are great at picturing a thing and terrible at picturing lots of things.
All right.
Like the fox and the hedgehog. Nate Silver used to use this analogy all the time.
Oh, no. That's terrible because I never read it.
You can be very good at one thing or you can be good at a lot of different things, but not spectacular. But the lot of little things, person is way more adaptable.
Okay.
Like, I only do AI. Oh, yeah, guess what happened this week?
Right.
Oh, now I'm out of a job. Normally, that's a disadvantage for the party in charge. The Inflation Reduction Act invested over $100 billion in clean energy, which sounds nice, but it's also such a large number as to be meaningless. I could have said it was a trillion or 90 gazillion. Doesn't matter. All you hear is a lot.
Yeah. All right.
But for Trump's big government cruelty, big numbers are helpful. Hitting pause on $40 billion in medical research is worse than stopping a single study, but it doesn't feel worse.
Hmm.
So what's going small? I mean, you have to point out Trump is stopping cancer treatment.
I see. All right. I get the...
Not use a big number. That doesn't matter. What matters is grandma's cancer treatment's on hold because of what Trump just did. What matters is that evangelical food banks are running out of money
and being raided
because of what Trump did. Hospitals can't buy food
nice.
And medicine because of what Trump just did. You have to make it small, but make it not abstract.
Okay, I see. That makes sense, and I've heard that advice before, certainly, and that the answer to this stuff isn't technocratic mumbo jumbo. Well, actually, we've had a 40% increase in efficiency in our spending.
47.2% increase in efficiency, and no. Right, Grandma can't get her chemo.
Yes.
That's what you need to highlight. And clear stakes are better than high stakes.
Okay.
If you're reading a newsletter like this one, it might seem obvious Trump is trying to destroy American democracy and put an oligarchy in place. But saying something like that to somebody who doesn't already believe it is unlikely to do anything.
Or know what an oligarchy is.
People who oppose Trump think Trump is ruining America. That must be because he's really effective and therefore he's really strong, and I like strong president. No, focus on something tangible. What's one thing that Trump's actions are already making worse?
Coffee.
Cancer treatment, coffee prices, egg prices.
Yeah.
The stock market dropping.
Right.
Tangible things. You don't have to talk about the percentage it's dropping, how much money is being lost by. That's not the point. The point is it's dropping by a lot. How much is a lot? You figure it out. Go look it up. Educate yourself. The point is,
do your own research,
and you can go look it up and prove it.
Okay.
Now, silence is sometimes strategy, says his speechwriter David Litt. During Trump 1.0 and in the Biden years that followed, I sometimes heard that silence is complicity. And in a lot of cases, that's true. But in other cases, it's important to recognize that some of Trump's actions are popular. And instead of litigating them, it's better to stay focused on the stuff that everybody agrees is heinous or unpopular, which unfortunately there'll be plenty of.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So, in a lot of cases, Trump picks something that's relatively popular. This whole thing that he's doing with migrants is relatively popular, so you have to be relatively careful. You can't just say he's cruel. Voters don't care. Right. They already proved that. You certainly cannot focus on Trump being corrupt. Everybody knows that. The voters certainly don't care about that. Egg prices, that you can focus on. That grandma doesn't get her chemo because of a decision that Trump made, you can focus on that. Well, he's implementing Project 2025. What the hell is Project 2025? Don't bother. Tell people he had a plan, and in the plan is this that he just did, and tell them what this is. Don't use stupid titles that they don't know what it means. That's,
I think they actually did a pretty good job on that one.
What the hell does that mean?
Stop that I've never understood. Okay.
It's the same idea.
Yeah, it's the same idea. But I do think, I think a better work was done in 2025.
So you must be one.
Yes. We got the unusual permission structure to use the phrase Project 2025 when celebrities started shouting it out at award shows. Like, oh, okay, well, that's unusual. But in the main, I'm certain he's got a point.
Right. The other thing is, don't let Trump be the main character. Right. I really go out of my way when I do the pundit roundup not to put Trump's picture at the top.
Well, it's gross. And
I've done that for months.
Good for you.
Right. Now, Trump won the popular vote. If Trump won the popular vote, David Litt says, he's relatively popular. If he's relatively popular, don't ask them, the voters, to regret voting for him after just 1 week.
Yeah, although a week of Trump
all you'll
is a
do
month.
is get into an argument with them. As a general rule, if Trump is the main character of the story, you're asking people to weigh in on Trump. Now is not the time. It's only been a week. And opinions about Trump are pretty difficult to change. Focus the attention on something he did, not who he is.
All right. Which one?
Trump is the reason egg prices are going up. Trump is the reason the stock market's going down. Trump is the reason that grandma can't get her chemo. Mm-hmm. I have nothing against Trump, but look what he did. That's what you have to do. Not, can you believe that, Trump? Everybody hates Trump. Why don't you hate Trump? How did you vote for Trump? That is a complete total waste of time, which is going to backfire. Don't do that. Let time, 100 days pass, drop the popularity of a president, because it always does, and remind people to accelerate that drop, what he's doing that you don't like. That South Dakota farmer, don't argue with him about whether Trump's a crook or not. He doesn't care. But tell him it's going to affect his 24-hour, constant milk production, because he's doing so many bad things to your workers that they are not going to show up. Tell him that. Concentrate on that, not Donald Trump. It's not that hard.
I guess that would probably work for that guy. I mean, at the moment, he doesn't believe that.
And every guy like that has their own story, and they're all, forget about Trump, look what Trump is doing.
But perhaps if you have a certainty like that, and you can certainly say it, and they say, well, one, I don't believe you, he's not going to do it. But I guess if he's got any capacity,
look at your own bottom line.
Well, right.
Go to work tomorrow and see how many people show up. Don't talk to me about it. Don't tell me I'm wrong.
Well, he will until he sees that his people aren't showing up, and so far they're still there.
Then you can go back and talk to him again.
Right. Now I guess you have to wait it out. But at the very least, you've picked something that you're likely to be able to return and say, "See, I was right." And then if the guy has any, logic, then he'll say, "Hey, I remember you said that, and you were right about that. Perhaps I should listen more." But
so he gives an example.
They don't have that.
Right. You don't like January 6th? You have this abstract thing about democracy and all of that? And that he's totally unfit to be president, this, that, and everything else.
I do have that.
No.
Well,
here's how you tell the story.
Yeah.
And there's a quote. There's a guy named Daniel Rodriguez. On January 5th, he texted his friends, "There'll be blood." On January 6th, he stormed the Capitol. He grabbed the police officer, shocked him in the neck with a stun gun. A jury of peers sentenced him to 12 years in prison for a violent crime against a police officer. And less than 24 hours after taking office, Trump let that guy back on the street. That's what you need to know about January 6th.
Okay. It's a good story.
It's true, and it's concrete, and it's not, oh, Trump bad.
Well, it is, but it isn't what you've said. You've said a different thing.
The guy says, I could say more, David Litt. I could say more. But the most important thing, a story about one person who isn't Donald Trump and one action Trump took, which just about everybody can agree is bad, that's what you do now. Good news, in a week not exactly full of it, is that a decent number of our political and cultural leaders are already zeroing in on these kinds of stories. Trump might be getting more favorable coverage than he deserves, but he's also wildly overreaching. And he's not a good person, but he's good at driving message. If we stay disciplined, focus on one story at a time, keep the stakes small, clear, and personal, it's grandma's chemo, we can be even better.
Well, it's a theory, and we're testing it. We'll see. I do have to tell you, one thing I've gotten very tired of, besides the fire hose of Trump news, is the fire hose of, I know how to deal with Trump. You just listen to me. And some of it's good, some better than others. Some of it is not even contradictory. It's just, but I haven't said it in my column yet.
Well,
okay.
And at the end of
That's
it,
fine.
in secret letters that if you hold up to a candle, you can read. It says, "Hire me."
Yeah. Yes, there is that too. And then there's also this abiding feeling that I have at this stage of the game where we're in this down and dirty
What's Biden got to do with it?
war with this stuff. And like, what I really don't feel like I need in this bare knuckles thing is an Obama speechwriter. But okay, tell me what you're thinking.
Obama did okay with his rhetoric.
Oh, he was fine, right? As a speech guy, no doubt. But Obama hasn't changed his style much in terms of what he has to say about things. And yeah, I think he falls more in the category of people who are like, I'm not certain you're ready for this fight, but tell me what you have to say. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, this fight is coming regardless because
Yes.
Trump is doing those things.
Well, yes.
And I think he's overreaching. Chris Hayes tweeted yesterday, I just can't help but think Trump is overreaching and is going to be very unpopular. It's just my gut feeling, and I can't shake it. It's just going to take time. And I agree with that. I've been saying that for a week.
Yes, I agree with it too. But I mean, Trump is an overreaching, grabby person, both physically and I mean, okay.
Okay, but there's
that.
two separate tracks here we have to talk about.
All right.
Okay. One is, what do you do if you're a Democratic senator? It's okay, and don't flip out if you vote for Marco Rubio. Just don't vote for Pete Hegseth. Just don't vote for Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, there's concrete things that you can do that people can look at. But then the reason the rhetoric is so important is that it is normal for the party that lost to be morose and depressed and pulling back and doing all the things you need to do to keep your mental health intact. That's normal. And so for rhetoricians like this speechwriter to tell people, here's how you have to think about it is fine. It serves a role. It isn't just I have to fill a column. It's, are you depressed that there's nothing you can do? Here's something you can do.
I guess that's true. And there are also multiple audiences, and I'm not always the audience. That's true. I mean, I do feel like, well,
you are for the first hour of the show.
I have to sit here and
you have to sit here and listen to this.
But he might not be writing for me. I find, I don't know, the last week plus reading Blue Sky has been less fulfilling for me, but mostly because I'm reading it and saying, yeah, I know. Who do you think doesn't know this?
I mean, that's when you pick up a newspaper. Isn't that yesterday's story?
Yep. But I don't know. I haven't found the right. Maybe I haven't found the right stream just yet. But yeah. Anyway. Okay. Well, what can I tell you? We focus on the things that he's doing, and it's always best. We've heard this in different ways a number of times, to be telling stories, to be relating to the experiences of voters rather than certainly telling them the technocratic numbers. 40% less cancer treatment will be happening. Okay, 100% of grandmas will not be happening. Okay, gotcha. Easy enough to understand. As for the senators voting for nominees, I mean, I guess I'm not flipping out over anybody's having voted for Rubio. Although I do ask myself, well, what was the point of voting for Rubio? What's Rubio going to do for you? What do you get out of that? Well, just vote no.
He's a fellow senator. I mean, fine,
so what?
Whatever.
But now he's a puppet Secretary of State for Trump.
Josh Marshall had a story that said that Sheldon Whitehouse and RFK Jr. were best buddies.
Yeah.
They were roommates in college or something. And so Whitehouse hasn't automatically ruled out voting against him.
I know.
That's bad.
Yeah, right. We don't want that one.
Marco Rubio.
And I can understand like sort of the impulse of, I knew him when he seemed like a decent guy, except he was a heroin addict. So
don't pay attention to what John Fetterman says. Pay attention to what John Fetterman does.
He's not doing great either.
Who?
But Fetterman. What he's voting.
Who did he vote for Hegseth?
I guess that
he voted against it.
Yeah, Hegseth's an easy one, and he certainly.
Didn't you learn anything from Manchin and Sinema? I don't care what they say. I care how they vote.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
Right? Fetterman's got a bunch
it's just
of
a question of where you draw the
voters
line
in his state that voted for Trump, and if he sounds less resistance than you would like, so frickin' what?
Yeah, well, sound is one thing, but I'm glad he voted against Hegseth. I just wonder about, like, where's the guy who cares that he voted yes for Kristi Noem? Like, who's positively happy about that? That's good. I'm glad he's cooperating with my favorite president. Yeah.
And I say, pick your battles. You can't win them all. And who cares about Kristi Noem?
But it's not even a battle.
The important ones are Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel.
True. But to the extent that it's a battle. But there's no battle over Kristi Noem. Vote no. She wins the battle. She's the secretary. What's the battle?
That's how I would look at it. But I don't come from a state that voted for Trump in re-election.
Well, that's true. But
so Fetterman
one guy
should he do something like that, like vote for Noem and Rubio, but I don't know how he voted, but against the others.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Go back to his constituent and say, I'm not reflexively anti-Trump. Look what I did on these other. I mean, that's why they do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm starting to wonder whether there's an audience for that anymore. Oh, I'm not reflexively
Well, if you win your election, the answer is yes.
Yeah,
and even those that lose their election gets thousands, hundreds of thousands of votes. So sure, there's an audience for it.
Yeah, but I don't know that the audience says, that's what I heard. He's not reflexive. It was more, I was upset about the egg thing, or I was happy about the coffee thing.
When you win, everything you did was brilliant.
Right. Yeah, well, that's one of the problems.
Everything you did was stupid.
It's trying to figure out which one of those things helped you win.
Well, that's why these guys write these columns about how you should have done it.
Yeah, that's true. But that's what makes those columns so interesting.
Yes, I suppose.
Okay. So Sheldon Whitehouse, please don't vote for your college roommate.
And we don't know that he will.
He doesn't care.
These are the kinds of things that make stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you knew him. He was a great guy. Then he got a worm in his brain, and now he's different. And he might not even remember that you voted no.
There's a story from ProPublica. Teddy Wilson put this up on Blue Sky. Madison and Nashville school shooters appear to have crossed paths on online extremist communities. I'm more interested in that than I am about how much money NVIDIA is going to lose this week on the stock market.
Yes, that's true. Although it's a fun story. I would like to know about why are so many people who are participating in these online forums together getting ideas that shooting places up is a good idea. Can't we stop that?
Now, David Rothkopf has, and this is in the Pundit Roundup, David Rothkopf has I found it to be a very fun story because I'm old. I'm as old as he is.
Oh, I see.
I remember these things. And the title of his piece is Sermonette Toward a Democratic Party That Doesn't Suck.
Oh.
But what he starts out is invoking when he was a little kid what TV was like.
Okay.
Growing up in the New York suburbs, black and white, 7 television channels, channel 2, channel 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. That's it.
Some people had
none
only
of
3.
them were on 24 hours a day. So you get up in the middle of the night, turn your TV on, you're going to see a test pattern.
Yeah, go back to bed.
Go back to bed, right? And he writes, it freaked me out when I would wake up in the middle of the night and turn on the TV, or a message that broadcasts would resume in the morning. Like, who's in charge? Me in my pajamas? Like, who's running the place? Oh, my God. So he says, sometimes if it was starting to be light out and I knew that broadcasting had to resume soon, I'd sit up in front of the television and wait for the test pattern to disappear. It was around 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And then it would always be followed by specific things. This is how the networks used to start their day. There'd be the national anthem.
Yes.
There'd be video of flag waving or jets flying overhead. Right. And then there'd be something called sermonette. It was a brief message from some kind of clergy guy of some background you never knew who, really anodyne. And they're all white guys. And then you could watch Modern Farmer. I remember Modern Farmer.
Really?
They would show combines and how people pick crops and stuff like that. Then they'd have Davy and Goliath, which were claymation cartoons from the Lutheran Church.
Yeah. Okay,
I mean,
that I remember.
they always start this way. So that's where his sermonette comes from.
Okay.
So he puts together a sermonette for lost Democrats.
All right.
And there are voices out, and I think this is another thing that Democrats can hone in on and concentrate on. Not that Orange guy is bad, but we have to fix our own party. What does that mean? Among other things, we have to support younger voices.
All right.
The old guys are going to have to be pushed out because they will not leave willingly. That's why you have all these 80-year-olds running for office again. Push them out. AOC, Raskin, Whitmer, Newsom, Crockett, Chris Murphy.
Okay.
There are no doubt new voices most of us aren't even aware of. But to win, Democrats must be seen as the party of the strongest leaders who make their case with actions, not just words. And enough with scorched earth GOP tactics being met by Democratic hand-wringing.
Well, that's upsetting.
Get involved, do something. We need a leadership transplant, a character infusion, a vision upgrade starting now. When I say now, I mean next week, because that's where the Democratic leadership vote is going to happen, and we'll see who's running the DNC.
I see. All right. Yeah. When I say now, I mean
even though they don't
week.
do a whole lot.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's true too. Don't
elect an 80-year-old.
Hang your hat on that either.
Don't elect the same person who's always been doing this.
Okay. We can't. They're not running.
Elect somebody who's young and dynamic and knows how to use social media.
Yeah, that would be wise. Okay. Yeah, that's cracked me up. When I say now, I mean next week. Okay, I know, but that is fast when it comes to electing new leadership.
That's lightning fast.
Yes, I guess. Went for leadership, right.
Trump will still be popular next week, but you can start working on your own party's leadership.
Okay.
So that they're in place to do something about it when it becomes unpopular, which is your job to make them unpopular.
Oh, always my job, huh? Okay. I'll accept the assignment.
Anyway, see you Wednesday.
Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Big help rounding up the weekend. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Boy, there's a lot happening. Okay, so I guess now sort of kind of maybe up to speed, although it's very confusing and hard to know whether you really have the real, who knows what the real facts are. But that's part of the Trump methodology, is to leave some doubt about the facts with respect to the Colombian trade war and deportations. My recollection of the timeline was essentially that, yes, Trump decided, I suppose, to be strongly strong and use military aircraft to do these deportations and to get a little extra cruelty in on the way back. Although the video that was provided, as we said, was allegedly the deportation of Brazilian nationals, not Colombian nationals. But the claim is that they were subject to more or less the same treatment. There were some quotes from people who were on that first flight describing the indignity of it. And ordinarily, it is not military aircraft that are being used for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that most countries don't like unscheduled military aircraft incursions in their airspace. The second being that it sends the wrong message. For normal diplomatic relations between countries, it matters that you are not militarizing an operation that is 100% civilian. I understand that you feel like your laws have been violated and may in fact have been violated by the migrants you're returning. That's why you're deporting them. But it's still a civilian matter, not a military matter, and it makes a difference, and it looks bad, and it upsets the other country. And it's not done for that reason. But Trump would say, who cares what that reason is? I want to be strongly strong. And, it must be said, I want to be tough on them. I want to be dictatorial. I want to punish them. And I'm sure in his mind is if we treat them nicely, then they don't care. They come back. They go, we catch them again. They say, what's the big deal? I'm going to get a nice flight and an in-flight beverage and a movie. And that's not actually how it works. But he can fool the rest of the American populace into thinking that's what happens because they have to charter civilian type aircraft to send them back. Right. And I mean, if you think about the logistics of it, of course it makes sense. In fact, you can deport people on regularly scheduled commercial flights. But do you want to? Well, you'll only do that with people who give you reason to believe they will go willingly and peacefully back. Because if they raise a stink and have to be, shackled to their seat, then it disturbs all the other passengers. The commercial airliners don't want that happening, but they will charter you a flight and you fill it entirely with deportees, and everybody knows why they're there and what to expect, and that they're going to be grousing and complaining the whole time. But by the same token, there's no reason why you shackle people to the seats. There's no reason why you deny them food and water during the flight. You don't have to give them in-flight entertainment. You may choose to do so because the plane is already outfitted to do that, so why the hell not? But, I guess that's up to you. But in terms of giving them food and water and allowing them to visit the bathroom, yeah, you're going to have to treat them as civilian detainees, not even prisoners. They're not prisoners. So, it makes a difference how the other country feels too. Remember, they have to give you the permission to land and they have to accept these returnees. And that was apparently another issue, was it wasn't entirely clear that all of the people on board being quote unquote returned to Colombia were in fact Colombians. So you're going to want to make sure that they're actually being returned to the right country and that they're treated with some dignity and respect. Donald Trump is not in the treat other people with dignity and respect game. And he found out there were other players in the game who said, no, there has to be dignity and respect or we turn you around. What Mr. Strongly Strong used the military was not prepared to do is, I want you to shoot down Colombian military aircraft that try to deny us landing rights. He wasn't crazy enough to go that far. But his son was. There was that. Apparently, there was a moment during which Eric Trump chimed in the middle of all this with an ill-advised tweet that was relatively quickly deleted thereafter, but not before people saw it and got screenshots of it. But we'll get to that in a second, I guess, if I can remember. So the chronology of this was Trump makes this weird decision to, flex, I guess, and use military aircraft. That upsets everybody. The plane gets sent back. Trade war erupts. We're going to 25% tariff you. And then it was going to go to 50% in a week. Like he was going to ratchet it up, I guess, for every week of non-compliance. He didn't quite get that far in outlining his threats. But the fact that it's 25% now and it'll be 50% next week. I don't know whether it was going to go to 75% the week after that or whether, this was just supposed to be implied. Then I guess Colombia said, well, you're making it out like we're not going to accept the return of Colombian nationals. And we are. You just have to do it the normal way. Stop using military aircraft. Stop mistreating them during flight. I don't want to hear that the people were shackled and denied water and use of the bathroom during the flight back here. That's insane. We're not going to accept that. But you want to do things the way normal presidents have done it for years, charter a plane, send them back under humane conditions, fine. Go ahead and do it. And as I guess at some point during the conversation, the president of Colombia said, I'll even send my presidential plane to repatriate folks who are being deported from the United States just to be sure that they're decently treated, at least in the outset, when they get sent back. On top of all this, by the way, it should probably be pointed out that it is also, hey, Doge, are you listening? Considerably less expensive and more efficient economically to deport people on chartered civilian aircraft than to put a much more expensive to operate and much more necessary elsewhere, probably at any given time, military aircraft to this task. Now you have not much necessarily, but I guess if you're deporting 20 of these things to several different countries all the time, and you find yourself with the need of rapid military cargo transport, and your planes are in Brazil and Colombia instead of Texas and Florida, then you might end up kicking yourself at some point and say, well, why did I do that when I could have been using charter aircraft instead? And it costs a lot less. Military aircraft, not cheap to run. I mean, I imagine that Trump is thinking about things, again, in kitchen table, well, not kitchen table for him, ornate dining room table. But he thinks of everything as, his own personal budget. Well, I already have these military aircraft. I'm not going to pay an outside source, right, charter aircraft to do this. Yeah, but you are paying for military aircraft. It's not necessarily just a sunk cost. I guess he might think so. We already own the military aircraft. And there is an argument to be made that these military aircraft crews need a certain amount of flight time in order to stay current and stay qualified. And if there's nothing else that's going on, they're just going to end up running training flights. So you might as well give them something to do. Well, so long as it doesn't distract them from mission readiness elsewhere, I guess it's fine. But given that the actual operating cost per hour of one of these planes is so much higher than a civilian charter, maybe you want to rethink these things. Anyway, so then Colombia makes clear it's not that we're saying we won't accept deportees, you just got to be humane and international affair under international law and international procedure, diplomatic procedure under these things. To which the Trump administration, I guess at first says, well, fine, then we're not going to have the 25% tariffs, but maybe we'll have them anyway. And now you have to. And so apparently now we're back to you have to accept the military jets, but is it military jets, but we'll treat people better on them? Or no, you have to accept that we're going to mistreat people. That is not clear to me. At any rate, maybe that's what they're trying to get to, given what Eric Trump had to say about this stuff. Let's see if I can't find that. Somebody had screen capped it, teleported it over to Blue Sky for us. John Cooper has got it for us. And here's what John's got to say, or what John captured, rather, from Eric Trump. Eric Trump's, is it a tweet? I think so. Is that what that X in the corner means? This is some chest-thumping stuff from the guy whose cancer charity he allowed to be raided by his family. Any and all who dare to defy the American golden age, heed this warning. You will lose. Toe the line, or we will run you down. The gloves are off, and we're not playing around this time. For now, it's tariffs, but trust me, we can and will do so much worse. And always count on a Trump to tell you, I'll do worse, even if it's not Donald himself. It's one thing you can always count on from a Trump. He'll do worse. So anyway, apparently this Eric Trump tweet, as John says, threatening tweet was deleted by Trump's dumbest son, maybe 20 minutes after he posted it. And it took him that long to figure out, and 252,000 views later, that was unwise. I probably shouldn't be making threats like that, not as the president, but as the president's dumb son. Well, that was sort of depressing to see, to be reminded exactly how dumb he turns out to be. All right, so let's see. I don't know. I guess I thought this would be up to date. This Reuters story about the Colombia situation. U.S., Colombia reach deal on deportations, semicolon. Should I read out all this punctuation? Tariff, sanctions put on hold. Okay. I think that's where we are. I think, I don't know if I kept open the AP version of the story that I had on my phone is still open. Yeah, it is. I don't know. We'll see how it compares. But the AP version grabbed me as, why are you giving so much benefit of the doubt to the Trump White House on this one? The Reuters story, Phil Stewart and Oliver Griffin, goes something like this. The U.S. and Colombia, this is, by the way, as of 4:48 a.m. this morning, January 27th. The U.S. and Colombia pulled back from the brink of a trade war on Sunday after the White House said the South American nation had agreed to accept military aircraft carrying deported migrants. U.S. President Donald Trump, thank you for telling me, had threatened tariffs and sanctions on Colombia to punish it for earlier refusing to accept military flights carrying deportees as part of his sweeping immigration crackdown. But in a statement late on Sunday, the White House said Colombia had agreed to accept the migrants after all, and Washington would not impose its threatened penalties. And that's just a summary statement. We'll see whether there's any more detail and clarification about whether they agreed to accept the migrants, which they always agreed to accept, or whether they specifically agreed to, okay, you can do it on a military aircraft. The government of Colombia has agreed to all of President Trump's terms, including the unrestricted acceptance of illegal aliens, as they put it, from Colombia returned from the United States, including on U.S. military aircraft, without limitation or delay. It said, that is to say, the Trump White House said that was the case. But I don't know whether it matters what it said. After all, it says a lot of things. And we were reminded just yesterday about it by one of our very good online social media friends, Grudgy the Whale. And Grudgy had this to point out. In grabbing someone else's social media post about the statement from the White House saying, well, Colombia's agreed to everything that the White House wants. There's literally zero reason to believe any White House statement, certainly any Trump White House statement. They will declare victory in every situation, no matter what. Well, that's probably true. And he goes on to say, I bet you could find at least 100 Trump White House statements that were total fabrications. Remember his first COVID press conference where he said they had a deal with Google to find test locations? Oh, yeah, that's a good throwback, right? We made a deal with Google, and you can just go on the Google and find locations where anybody who wants a test can get a test. Not only was that not true, but there was no deal with Google. There was literally nothing about that. And Walmart said we could use their parking lots. No, they did not. And Google said they would have a list for us, and we have a deal in place. Now, they went scrambled to try to make that true after the fact, and not to any great success either. But yeah, eventually you'd be able to find that information on Google, but it's not because Google had a deal with them. And then a compendium of similar situations. Mueller found Trump totally innocent. No, he didn't. Or no, he effing didn't, as a matter of fact. We have proof of hundreds of thousands of fraudulent votes. No, you don't. We have totally contained COVID. No, you didn't. Right? All like Charlie Brown had a hose here, basically. And that's a very, very good point. Always to remember, that's not just necessarily paperwork, but Trump and the Trump White House is going to put that out regardless. We won, whether that's an accurate description of things or not. And for the most part, I think the U.S. press will play along. I imagine in Colombia, their view of things in the Colombian press is the United States caved to all the Colombian demands. I don't know who caved to what, but I have a feeling that maybe the truth lies somewhere in between. Back to the Reuters story. Draft orders imposing tariffs and sanctions on Colombia would be held in reserve and not signed unless Colombia fails to honor the agreement, it added, even though no one knows whether there is one. Today's events made clear to the world that America is respected again. President Trump expects all other nations of the world to fully cooperate in accepting the deportation of their citizens illegally present in the United States, the White House statement said. In a statement late on Sunday, Colombian Foreign Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo said, "We have overcome the impasse with the U.S. government." So that doesn't make anything clear, although it does make clear that he's not willing to endorse the idea that, yeah, they've said we'll accept anything the United States wants to throw at us. The government of Colombia has the presidential plane ready to facilitate the return of Colombians who were going to arrive in the country this morning on deportation flights. The statement did not specifically say that the agreement included military flights, but it did not contradict the White House announcement. although it's not clear that they'd even seen the White House announcements. Murillo and Colombia's ambassador to the United States will travel to Washington in coming days to follow up on agreements that led to the exchange of diplomatic notes between the two governments, the Colombian statement added. Washington's draft measures now on hold include imposing 25% tariffs on all Colombian goods coming into the U.S., which would go up to 50% in 1 week or 2 weeks or some very short period of time. A travel ban and visa revocations on Colombian government officials and emergency treasury banking and financial sanctions. Trump also threatened to direct enhanced border inspections of Colombian nationals and cargo ahead of the announcement of an agreement on the flights. The State Department spokesperson said the United States had suspended visa processing at the U.S. Embassy in Bogota. Colombia is the third largest U.S. trading partner in Latin America. The U.S. is Colombia's largest trading partner, largely due to a 2006 free trade agreement, which generated $38.3 billion, or $33.8 billion in two-way trade in 2023, under the Biden administration, and a $1.6 billion U.S. trade surplus, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. So we're always having a trade deficit. We got to reverse that. Biden says, okay, check this out. Boom, done, reversed. We have a trade surplus. Trump says, let's get rid of that and put a big tariff on there and have no trade. All right, let's see. This, and then the piece is illustrated with a photo of folks being loaded onto a migrants loaded onto a C-17 Globemaster III aircraft for a removal flight from Fort Bliss, Texas. No indication in the info there about where they are going. Let's see. There's more here. Is this going to give us any enlightenment about what actually the agreement is? I don't know. Okay, that's more about the trade issue. Then Colombian President Gustavo Petro earlier condemned the military deportation flight and said he would never carry out a raid to return handcuffed Americans to the U.S. We are the opposite of the Nazis, he wrote on Twitter. He also said, however, that Colombia would welcome home deported migrants on civilian planes and offered his presidential plane to facilitate their dignified return. Trump declared illegal immigration a national emergency, of course, and has imposed a crackdown since taking office last Monday. He directed the U.S. military to help with border security, issued a broad ban on asylum, and took steps to restrict citizenship for children born on U.S. soil, which is headed most likely for rejection at the Supreme Court, but he doesn't care. The use of military aircraft to carry out deportation flights is unusual, they finally tell you down here at the bottom. U.S. military aircraft carried out 2 flights, each with about 80 migrants to Guatemala on Friday. Mexico also refused a request last week to let a U.S. military aircraft land with migrants, but no trade war threatened there, apparently. Trump said he is thinking about imposing 25% duties on imports from Canada and Mexico anyway, though, on February 1st, which is the end of this week, to force further action against illegal immigrants and fentanyl flowing into the U.S. We're going to send it back on military planes. Brazil's foreign ministry on Saturday condemned degrading treatment of Brazilians after migrants were handcuffed on a commercial deportation flight. Upon arrival, some passengers also reported mistreatment during the flight, according to news reports. The plane, which was carrying, and I'm sure they thought this was hilarious, in the White House, 88 Brazilian passengers. Also, 16 U.S. security agents and 8 crew members had originally been scheduled to arrive in Belo Horizonte, in the southeastern state in Brazil of Minas Gerais. How's my pronunciation? I don't know. However, at an unscheduled stop due to technical problems in Manaus, the capital of Amazonas, Brazilian officials ordered removal of the handcuffs, and President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva designated a Brazilian Air Force flight to complete their journey, the government said in a statement on Saturday. You didn't hear much about that one. The commercial charter flight was the second this year from the U.S. carrying undocumented migrants back to Brazil, and the first since Trump's inauguration, according to Brazil's federal police. U.S. officials did not reply to requests for comments about Brazil. So, you got that story. The AP story that sort of concerned me a little bit was This was the headline. And what's the timestamp on this one? This is as of 11:02 p.m. last night. So this is an earlier story. So it's not developing in the direction necessarily that I was worried about it getting more pro-Trump. It might be getting more balanced, possibly. Anyway, it's as across AP and Reuters, so I can't really tell if there was, it's not like one is responding to the other. But the AP headline that I had found somewhat disturbing, I'll have to pocket it so I can find it for you later. White House says Colombia agrees to take deported migrants after Trump tariff showdown. And the lead paragraph, the White House claimed victory in a showdown with Colombia over accepting flights of deported migrants from the U.S. on Sunday, hours after Trump threatened steep tariffs on imports and other sanctions on the longtime U.S. partner. There's so more or less the same story, but yeah, it was kind of disturbing to see how easily the American press fell into the White House said it, so that's authoritative. But as Grudgy reminds you, they very frequently lie their asses off in official statements, and they don't care. They just want to get the headline out of you that they're looking for, and it's not entirely clear that they're entitled to it. So, whatever. Here's the CNN headline on it. This from 4:14 a.m. today. Colombia backs down on accepting deportees on military planes after Trump's tariff threats. That makes it sound like they've agreed to accept military flights, and I'm not certain that that's the case. They backed down on refusing military flights. That is, they refused them and it led to a trade war, and now the trade war might not happen, but it doesn't say anything about it's okay now to use military flights. Let's see if there's anything in the body of it here. Colombia has walked back from the brink of a damaging trade war with the United States, reaching an agreement on accepting deported migrants being returned on military planes, they say. After a flurry of threats from President Donald Trump that included steep tariffs, Colombia said Sunday evening it had agreed to, quote, all of President Trump's terms. Is that right? Including the unrestricted acceptance of immigrants who entered the U.S. illegally after two U.S. military planes carrying deportees were blocked from entering the country. And then the statement from the foreign minister, which doesn't say that. We will continue to receive Colombians and Colombian, that's an interesting way of putting it, receive Colombians and Colombian women. I mean, was that a translated thing? Is that why we receive Colombianos and Colombianas, which you can just translate into English as Colombians, but okay, who will return as deportees, guaranteeing them decent conditions as citizens subject to rights. Foreign Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo said in a televised statement. He added that U.S. deportation flights had resumed and the Colombian presidential plane was being prepared to assist repatriating citizens, which says nothing about military aircraft. The White House also backed off of its threat to impose tariffs unless Colombia fails to honor the agreement. We got that already. Then nonsense from the White House, the usual stuff. The announcement brings to an end a tumultuous weekend that threatened to raise coffee prices for American consumers. That was a strong argument, I'm sure, in Trump's mind. Oh, yeah, right. They're reacting poorly to this. Well, then, we won't tariff them. It's also the first time Trump took major action against another country over his immigration policy since he took office last week. That didn't take long. The feud began early Sunday morning. We know how. Petro blocked the planes from landing, prompting Trump to order steep tariffs. Visa restrictions also threatened. In response, Petro threatened retaliatory tariffs. And another statement as well saying, you will never see me burning a U.S. flag or carrying out a raid to return handcuffed immigrants to the U.S. By Sunday evening, the White House announced two countries had reached an agreement. The tough talkers at the White House saying, you can't go out there and publicly defy us in that way. A Trump administration official told CNN, we're going to make sure the world knows they can't get away with being non-serious and deceptive. Really? Only we can do that? Yeah, I don't think so. Consequences of a trade war are discussed, but again, I'm just not seeing anything here that makes it clear that Colombia is in fact saying, yeah, sure, military aircraft is fine. That just seems to be the freelance interpretation of it by the White House and the simple repetition of the White House's assertion that it's been accepted by American news sources. My guess is that the story is being reported differently in Colombia, and we'll see how things go in the days ahead. All right, I know that's it's probably more detail than it was really worth, but I don't know. I don't know. That's what we do on the show, right? And it is worth keeping an eye on how frequently does this happen, that the White House just says, we won, and the American newspapers just say, well, he did, very strongly, even though there's nothing in their own stories that indicates as much. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. One last note, I think I'll credit here Akiva Cohen, who wrote on Blue Sky a succinct encapsulation of what it looked like last night with respect to the situation with Colombia. Basically, coming down this way, Colombia saying, we're not taking shackled detainees returned on military flights. Transport them with dignity. Trump's response to that is, oh yeah, trade war. To which Colombia says, okay, fine. And then Trump says, well, fine. No shackled detainees returned on military flights. And Colombia says, good. And was that so hard? Trump, now speaking, I guess, to the American press, they gave in. Really? That's your interpretation of things? Well, it can be if the newspaper just repeats that. Okay. Let's see here. I wanted to grab and see what Radley Balco. I saw his post just now coming across the transom, reposted to my Blue Sky timeline here, saying from just 2 hours ago, it's worth emphasizing that the Colombia fight was not about accepting deportations. It was that the Colombian president demanded the deportees be treated humanely and not as props for Trump's performative cruelty. That simple request for decency was enough, though, for Trump to instigate a trade war, which I guess is of a piece with his reaction to the Episcopal bishop at the National Cathedral saying, I hope that you will consider having mercy on the weakest among us who are afraid in this country, to which Trump said, she was really nasty. And I understand that there are people in the Trump circles saying, you can, and the National Cathedral has a charter under the D.C. government, and perhaps you could revoke that charter. And I don't know whether you would necessarily shut down. I think the suggestion was, well, we'll rip it out of the hands of the Episcopal denomination that currently holds services there and recharter it as Southern Baptist or something, someone more in line with knuckling under the Trump administration, which along with raiding churches and raiding even evangelical churches, soup kitchens and food pantries, might just get, he's got a small margin to work with, both in Congress and in terms of his quote unquote victory at the polls. Not that matters very much anymore, whether or not he loses his voting coalition. Although he's also saying, I'm entitled to a third term. That too is out there. I know, a fire hose of stuff here. But apparently, maybe if we grab an article and discuss it more in depth, we'll provide the link. But suffice to say for now that in discussion among the overreaching legalist circles working for Trump, they're saying the limit of 2 terms is meant only to apply to 2 consecutive terms. If you serve 2 non-consecutive terms, you can still run for president again. And I guess if you step back every 4 years, you can just keep coming back over and over and over again. And since you're a vampire, maybe you'll never die and you can just be president forever. Sort of the Putin model, actually, right? When he stepped aside, quote unquote, to let his deputy Medvedev take over as president so that he could come back for another term. Anyway, that's never been anybody's interpretation of the Constitution. There is nothing that discusses the consecutive nature of the 2 terms. It just says 2 terms. But, there's nothing in the Constitution that says anything about presidential immunity either. So you never know what we're going to end up getting stuck with. We all turn out to be pretty wrong about that and so many other things. Okay, so let's see. Other items that need discussion. I mentioned earlier that there's something that had not yet gotten around to mentioning or reading in depth. There it is. But with respect to Greenland, which seems like so not important at this moment, but that's just one of the other fires that's burning. But by the way, before I get to that, I never even got to this one. This would have been a great preview of what was going on and would have set the context beautifully for the weekend blow up with Colombia. But sitting in pocket, waiting for you on January 24th, which was that's Friday, right? But I guess we didn't get to it. It was January 24th, 5 o'clock p.m., so it didn't show up in the news feed until well after the show, and I thought maybe I could get to it today and let you know, but then Colombia blew up, and we all learned. Mexico refuses to accept a U.S. deportation flight, we are told, and it is illustrated with video of exactly the same sort of the use of military aircraft here. And that's the issue. The Mexican government has criticized President Donald Trump's unilateral immigration actions, and the landing would have required Mexico's assistance. What's going on? Courtney Kube, K-U-B-E, I don't know how you pronounce that. And Jonathan Allen, which I do know how to pronounce, NBC News reporting this one. Mexico denied a U.S. military plane access to land Thursday, at least temporarily frustrating the Trump administration's plan to deport migrants or immigrants to the country, according to 2 U.S. defense officials and a third person familiar with the situation. 2 Guatemala-bound Air Force C-17s carrying about 80 people apiece flew deportees out of the U.S. Thursday night, the sources said. The third flight, slotted for Mexico, never took off. And by the way, for some reason, that wasn't mentioned even in the articles about Colombia. They said that the 88 people went to Guatemala. That was fine. I don't know. Did they mention the Mexico thing? They may have mentioned Mexico, but they didn't mention the turnaround and the refusal. It was not immediately clear why Mexico blocked the flight. Well, it is now clear, but I guess it was a question mark before to the media, which, it's just never been the case that military flights were used before. And I know that when I first found out about it, I was like, is that the way they usually do it? Military flights? People who knew a little bit more about it said, no, that's not how it works. And indeed, we did learn that in these articles. But apparently, they did this first with Mexico, and everybody was baffled. It was not immediately clear why Mexico blocked the flight, but tensions between the U.S. and Mexico, neighbors and longtime allies, have risen since Donald Trump won in November. Trump has also threatened to slap 25% across-the-board tariffs on Mexico in retaliation for migrants crossing the borders the countries share, but has not yet put them in effect because 2 weeks very soon. A White House official said in a text message that the flights thing was an administrative issue and was quickly rectified. Changed plans. After the publication of this article, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, tweeted yesterday Mexico accepted a record 4 deportation flights in one day. The White House official did not clarify whether they were military, commercial, or private flights because, of course, if they clarified that, then that could be characterized as the White House giving in to Mexico. So we just won't discuss the information. And we'll print this article anyway because who cares if we have complete information. The Department of Homeland Security official later told NBC News that the 4 deportation flights accepted by Mexico on Thursday were run by ICE Air Operations and were government-chartered flights, not military aircraft. Now, we do have the information. That is interesting. A White House official did not clarify whether they were military, commercial, or private flights, right? That's the end. That's a one-sentence paragraph. And I know it's right afterwards, but why not just join the two? I feel like stylistically, you join those 2 paragraphs together and say, by the way, that was nonsense. The White House was essentially getting huffy like a little baby about it and shutting up and clamming up about it because the truth is they weren't military. The White House official didn't clarify because it would make them look like they were losers. But a Department of Homeland Security official clarified, yeah, it's exactly what you thought. They said, all right, no military. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum's government said it opposes Trump taking unilateral action to implement restrictive immigration standards, including the reinstatement of a Remain in Mexico policy that forces migrants to stay in that country while they await adjudication of asylum claims. Flying deportees into a foreign country requires the cooperation of that nation's government. In a statement, Mexico's Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not go into detail on why the U.S. plane was not allowed to land in the country. Mexico has a very good relationship with the United States government. We cooperate with respect for our sovereignty on a wide range of issues, including migration. When it comes to repatriations, we will always welcome the arrival of Mexicans to our territory with open arms. Mexico embraces you. On Friday, Guatemala received 3 flights from the U.S. with Guatemalan nationals who had been sent back to their home country. A spokesperson for the Guatemalan Migration Institute told NBC News that 2 of Friday's flights were on military aircraft and the other was on a non-military plane. The total number of Guatemalans who arrived in Guatemala City from the 3 flights was about 265. It's not 11 million, but it's 265. The military deportation flights are part of a broader Trump administration crackdown on illegal immigration that's been set in motion, as you know. Really, that's about it. In addition to the flights, by the way, he's enlisted military to beef up its presence on the border with an additional 1,500 troops. But again, speaking with some trepidation, I think, American news sources, as opposed to saying, look, the problem was the military nature of the flights. True, the Guatemalans accepted 2 of them, but I don't know whether they then objected and got a third one that was civilian, or they accepted all 3 flights and then may or may not have said no more of these military things. Please stop it. I don't know. But yeah, a plane, same situation, Mexico, prior to the weekend. So had we gotten that news, it should have come as no surprise that Colombia would object similarly. Why Colombia ended up the target of this weekend's ire and not Mexico? Probably because it's easier to sell the American people on the idea of beating up on Colombia than the idea of beating up on Mexico. It's not hard to tell people we're going to be beating up on Mexico, but they're bigger and a bigger trading partner, and most Americans think of Colombia as I guess, somewhat less powerful in its relationship with the United States than Mexico. Anyway, all right, back to the other item I meant to bring to your attention earlier and didn't. I mentioned a piece in the Atlantic and a piece of some consequence, too, in that it is an Ann Applebaum piece about the deterioration in relations with Denmark over Greenland. And I think I saw that the New York Times caught up on this and printed something over the weekend on it too. But I don't know. For some reason, I don't know. There was something about it that I saw it and I said, well, I still want to tell the original story as Ann Applebaum put it, because she had a very interesting spin on it. Trump triggers a crisis in Denmark and Europe. What a single phone call from the president-elect, before he was, sworn in the last week, did to an unswerving American ally. Ann writes in The Atlantic, and I got it by virtue of a gift link, so I'm appreciative of that. What did Donald Trump say over the phone to, oh my goodness, I forgot, we got pronunciation issues, to Mette Frederiksen, the Danish prime minister, on Wednesday? I don't know which precise words he used, but I witnessed their impact. I arrived in what we call Copenhagen, and I think they say Copenhagen, a little closer to something like that. But I arrived in Copenhagen the day after the call. The subject, of course, was the future of Greenland, which Denmark owns and which Trump wants, and discovered that appointments that I had with the Danish politicians that she was to speak to were suddenly in danger of being canceled. Amid Frederiksen's emergency meeting with the business leaders, her foreign minister's emergency meeting with party leaders, and an additional emergency meeting with the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, everything all of a sudden was in complete flux. The result, mid-morning, I found myself standing on the Knippel Bridge between, and that's a fun pronunciation all by itself, by the way, Knippel. You could take a different approach to the pronunciation here. But standing on the bridge between the Danish Foreign Ministry and the Danish Parliament, holding a phone, waiting to be told which direction to walk. Denmark in January is not warm, and I went to the Parliament and I waited there. The meeting was canceled anyway, and after that, nobody wanted to say anything on the record at all. Thus have Americans who voted for Trump because of the putatively high price of eggs now precipitated a political crisis in Scandinavia. And guess what? I guess the gift thing is time limited, and I now no longer have access to the rest of the story, which I once had, which is too bad because, one, it was a good version of the story, and two, Pocket will not display an alternative version of it. And three, I didn't put aside the New York Times article because I said I've already got the Ann Applebaum story. But the point of the story, I think, well, it allows us to move on to something else. At any rate, the point of the story was that there's genuine concern in Denmark in political circles. We don't know what the hell this president wants. The article, the first time I got to read it, went on to explain the nature of the relationship between Denmark and the United States, Denmark being one of the first and original members of NATO. And as a result, they essentially have granted any American request for access to and or use of Greenland territory that has ever been requested. Want to put a military base there? Fine. We have no problem with it. Go ahead and do it. You want to put troops there? Fine. No problem. Go ahead and do it. You want to mine for minerals there? Fine. No problem. Go ahead and do it. So there's no barrier to it. So for the United States to say it's imperative for national security that we own Greenland, there's no such imperative. There's no reason to own it. There's certainly no reason to take on the burden of trying to run the place and trying to maintain the place when if we're interested in basing or exploration, mineral exploration or exploitation for that matter, we can have it and it costs nothing. So what's the issue? The issue is, it's very big on a map and Trump thinks it would look really cool if we were able to grab it. Plus, of course, I don't know whether he's serious or not, talking about Canada as a 51st state, et cetera, which, by the way, I do understand that the government of British Columbia now, since Canada will be involved in a trade war with the United States, saying, by the way, the land route, the trucker route between Alaska and Washington state, you got to cross over two borders, with British Columbia, and we're going to be charging you some additional tolls and tariffs there too. Price of everything in Alaska just doubled. But, we'll see when we get back around to that one. All right, let's see. There's so many other things to get to, but too bad I didn't. Well, I'll see if I can round up the New York Times article, just so that we have there was something about it, though, that grabbed me as not particularly helpful in explaining the nature of the relationship with Denmark. But at any rate, there is that. Let's see, a couple other things that I should probably put on the record. Why not this one? Something from the Associated Press, just to harken back to an earlier story that we discussed some weeks ago. Now another Scandinavian government getting involved in the act here, not Danish and not about Greenland, but about the Baltic Sea. Sweden now seizes a vessel suspected of sabotage after another, undersea data cable rupture in the Baltic Sea. Can you believe it? Now, this is one, I don't think there's one that happened over the weekend. The seizure may have happened over the weekend, but the sabotage, I think, is dated a little earlier. But here's what we have from, or in the AP here. They give a writing credit on this or no? Don't see one. Swedish prosecutors announced Sunday night that they have opened a preliminary investigation into suspected aggravated, quote, sabotage, and ordered the detention of a vessel in the Baltic Sea suspected of damaging an underwater fiber optic cable connecting Latvia and the Swedish island of Gotland. How's my pronunciation on that one? Gotland. Like got milk, but land, right? Gotland, probably. I wonder, I don't know if it has anything to do with goats. Gotland, though, earlier that day. This is an autonomous region ruled entirely by goats. Anyway, several authorities, including the National Police Operations Department, the Coast Guard, and the Armed Forces are involved in the investigation, said, over to, are we Swedish guy here? Yeah, Mats Lundqvist. Okay. Senior prosecutor at the National Security Unit, according to this press release. The Swedish Coast Guard confirmed to the newspaper Expressen that they were on site near the vessel, which the paper identified as the Malta-flagged Vezhin, V-E-Z-H-E-N, Vezhin, at anchor near the port of Karlskrona. We are directly on site with the seized ship, and we are taking measures as decided by the prosecutor, said Matthias Lindholm, spokesperson for the Coast Guard. So far, not such a bad job, I think, or it's not so hard to do the Swedish names so far. But wait till we get to the Latvians, I guess. According to data from Vessel Finder, the vessel departed from the Russian port of Ust-Luga several days earlier and was navigating, but I guess not all that carefully, between Gotland and Latvia at the time the damage was suspected of having occurred. Latvia's state-run radio and TV center said Sunday that it recorded disruptions in data transmission on the cable running from the town of Ventspils to the Swedish island of Gotland and concluded that there was a rupture. The media organization said it was able to operate using other data transmission routes while it was taking steps to have the cable repaired. At the moment, there is reason to believe that the cable is significantly damaged, and the damage is caused by external influences, said, Vineta Sprugain, S-P-R-U-G-A-I-N-E, head of corporate communications at LVRTC, Latvian company, I guess, the Latvian radio, television, maybe, was quoted as saying, by the LSM state broadcaster. Okay. Latvian Prime Minister, Evika Seliņa, maybe. Seliņa? Yeah. We'll guess. Wrote on Twitter that her government was working together with our Swedish allies and NATO on investigating the incident, including to patrolling the area as well as inspecting the vessels that were in the area. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson Got it. Wrote on Twitter that at least one cable belonging to a Latvian entity was believed to have been damaged, and that he's been in close contact with Silinia during the day on Sunday. Sunday's rupture follows a string of incidents that have heightened fears of Russian sabotage and spying in the strategic region. There have been previous incidents reported of ruptures of data cables running on the Baltic seabed, allegedly linked to Russia's shadow fleet. Hundreds of aging tankers of uncertain ownership that are dodging sanctions and keeping oil revenue coming into the country. Earlier this month, NATO began a new mission dubbed Baltic Sentry, which included frigates, maritime patrol aircraft, and a fleet of naval drones to provide enhanced surveillance and deterrence in the Baltic Sea, which the Transatlantic Alliance says is to protect undersea cables and pipelines. Well, okay, so just one more incident to add to the list there. Something to keep an eye on, and something that, having revealed this happening before, has not yet put a stop to. They've been kind of caught red-handed, but essentially daring us to come up with something to actually do about it. Okay, let me share one last item that Scott sent our way from Judd Legum's Popular Information Substack style entry. The foreign policy of an American kleptocracy. And oh no, we have to look at Jared Kushner's face again. And even though he's supposedly not involved in this second Trump administration, I guess basically he kind of is, because money is being moved around and he wants some of that. President Trump's Middle East policy took a dark turn on Saturday. This too, we haven't even had a chance to get to, when he announced on Air Force One that he favored the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from Gaza. Yes, might as well put that out there, yeah? I'm sure you heard about it over the weekend. You're talking about 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing, Trump said. Enormously, just insane thing to go on the record with. Well, to do it all, obviously, but to go on the record with it, like, also don't say that part out loud, even if you have this evil design. Trump was not just floating a theoretical policy. His administration is already taking steps to try to remove more Palestinians from the area. Trump said he spoke with King Abdullah II of Jordan, a country that has already taken in nearly 2.4 million Palestinian refugees, quote, to take on more. He indicated he would press Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to take in Palestinians currently living in Gaza in a call on Sunday. And yeah, in true Trump fashion, well, I called them on the phone and I told them you should take more of these people. Now, the United States, in the meantime, involved in using military aircraft to deport everyone left and right. We're taking no more people, but you should take more people. And like, yeah, why didn't anybody ever think of putting Palestinian refugees in neighboring countries? I can't believe this has been going on for 75 years and nobody ever had this idea. They have it all the time. They don't want to go there. And the people in the other countries, should be pointed out, also not very interested in taking them. So, but I called them on the phone and I said, you should do this. And I guess now the difference is, this lunatic might bomb us, for all I know, unless we take these people. Maybe that makes a difference. I don't know. And of course, Trump would be most proud for it to be the case that they do so because they're afraid of him, which is amazing. Trump said the relocation might be temporary or could be long term. And of course it would be, and the reason Jared Kushner is in the picture here is they want to build luxury hotels because it's such nice oceanfront Gaza. He said he wants to, quote, build housing for Gazans in different locations. This is a quote. I want to build housing in different locations where they can maybe live in peace for a change. And you should be sure he doesn't care to be building housing for them. He just wants them to be taken on by other countries so that Gaza can be empty for him to build hotels. What are the motivations and the origins of Trump's radical new policy? Follow the money. That's Judd's suggestion. Trump discussed his vision for Gaza on January 20th, the first day in office, suggesting Gaza could be an ideal site for real estate development. Gaza is interesting. It's in a phenomenal location. On the sea, the best weather, everything's good. Trump said, while signing executive orders in the Oval Office, it's like some beautiful things could be done with it, but it's very interesting. But some fantastic things could be done with Gaza. Trump said that Gaza has really got to be rebuilt in a different way, and that he might be interested in helping. In an October 7th, 2024 interview with radio host Hugh Hewitt, Trump expounded on his vision for Gaza as a luxury resort. It could be better than Monaco. It has the best location in the Middle East, the best water, the best everything. They never took advantage of it. As a developer, it could be the most beautiful place, the weather, the water, the whole thing, the climate. It's pretty disgusting, but there you have it. Trump's policy of relocating Gazans and redeveloping the country closely matches a vision floated by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, last year. Kushner was Trump's top advisor on Middle East policy during his first administration, and although he doesn't have formal White House position now, I guess that never mattered in the first place, but he does continue to advise the president. Reuters also reports that Kushner is very, very close to Trump's White House chief of staff, Susie Wiles, and has been advising Steve Witkoff, a longtime Trump friend and donor, on a new job as special envoy to the Middle East. After leaving the White House, of course, Kushner raised billions from foreign governments, including $2 billion from Saudi Arabia, to start a private equity fund, Affinity Partners, focused on large real estate developments. What a strange coincidence. In a February 2024 interview at Harvard's Middle East Initiative, we heard about it when it happened. Kushner described Gaza as waterfront property, very valuable, and Kushner said Israel should seek to move people out and then clean it up. Wow. Further, Kushner said that the United States should pursue diplomacy, that's nice, with Egypt to convince them to accept more Palestinians. He also indicated Jordan should accept Palestinian refugees, noting that Jordan had accepted Syrian refugees. Kushner criticized the American government for not pressuring Egypt, Jordan, and other countries to more aggressively facilitate a solution. If Egypt and Jordan would not accept Palestinians, Kushner suggested moving Palestinians from Gaza to the Negev Desert in southern Israel, because just put them anywhere, they don't matter, at least not to Kushner. Anyway, of course, lots of money involved in the guy who has no formal role. And so therefore no conflict of interest.
Listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
Time now, though, to hand things over to Justice Button for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. As always, following this program right here on Netroots Radio. Guess where they're going to start today? Trump is enacting Schedule F from Project 2025 to gut the civil service and replace it with die-hard loyalists. Oh, we didn't even get to the Inspectors General story. He'll be covering that, I'm sure. We'll see you tomorrow.